Good morning. Well, it is for me anyway. We have been talking about customers. And what do we know about customers? Specifically consumers. They're lazy. It's worse than that. Say again? Well, I wouldn't go that far. They're dumb, no. Although we did talk about stupid customers, but that was in a specific context. Yes? Say again? You're going to say the same thing? So we've all been customers, right? What's that saying about ourselves? So we know we're lazy, and actually we're not lazy. We are lazy Bueller. Thinkers? Lazy thinkers? Yeah, that's right. Lazy thinkers. What else do we know about customers, consumers? Yes? They don't always know what they want. That's good. What else? Yes? They're biased. Okay, what else? This is a pleasant picture that we're painting, aren't they? Say again? They're selfish. Yes, they're selfish. Once more. They need education or guidance. Say again? Okay, so they have problems. So they're lazy thinkers. They have problems. They're biased. Yes? They don't like complicated instructions. They don't care about getting the job done best. They only want to get it done right. We got enough. So that's a pretty picture that we have customers. They're lazy thinkers, biased, and irrational. Other than that, and then we also know that they go through this process that once you've recognized you have a problem, then you can figure out what your alternatives are, determine which of those alternatives is the best solution to your problem, and then decide to go with one of the alternatives. And after that, you will have experience with that, which will lead back into the evaluation of the next transaction, although you don't have to buy every time you notice a problem. Thank goodness for that. And that was pretty cut and dried, but today we're going to talk about is if that wasn't complicated enough, that we've got these problem, irrational, lazy, biased, selfish thinkers who are going through this process trying to solve the problem, and we as marketers are only trying to help them solve the problems in a way that's a win-win situation. There's a whole lot more going on during that process, which makes it even more fun. And we'll talk about those today. So we got some psychological stuff going on. We got some personality. We got some social stuff going on. We've got some stuff going on based on the situation. And then we've got some stuff going on based on information. All of those have an impact as to how we go through that process and ultimately whether we decide to buy or not to buy. First, I want to talk about some psychological stuff because I like psychological stuff. We had talked before that problem recognition is motivation. Motivation in psychology is essentially the difference between a desired state and an actual state. And there are two basic sources of motivation. You've probably heard about this. There's the physiological, where I need food in order to stay alive. And then as human beings, we also have psychological or social needs. It's not just to be alive, but we need to have contact with other human beings in order to be healthy. Not all needs are equally motivating, and you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's pyramid. This was famously introduced by Abraham Maslow, where he talked about we have various levels of needs, and the idea behind Maslow's pyramid is that we have basic physiological food, clean air, we need to feel safe, And unless we have enough to eat and unless we have a safe place to sleep, that's going to be the primary driver of our activity. And then once we have a safe place to live and we have our basic needs taken care of, then we can start dealing with some of the higher level social needs. So we want to have friends, and then maybe we want to start to shine and show a little bit how much better we are. And then ultimately, we want to be self-actualizers, as just being the best that we can possibly be, doing what we love to do. Wouldn't that be nice? And the point is, from this perspective, is in a consumer culture, now arguably there is still a lot of homelessness, there's a lot of hunger, there's a lot of poverty, but the vast majority of commercial activity that takes place in a consumer culture is dealing with some of these higher level needs, dealing with social needs, belongingness, ego satisfaction, and this idea of self-actualization. And what we'll talk perhaps a little bit later, actually more recent research has suggested, and even Abraham Maslow in his later days has suggested, that this pyramid might be inverted. Is that the need for social connection is so powerful that even people in situations where I don't have enough to eat, don't have a safe place to live, are still motivated by need for belongingness, need for ego satisfaction, which is an interesting observation. The point is, from a marketing perspective, most of the activity that we are doing is dealing with motivations related to these higher level needs. And then some of the things we talked about before, people are not always conscious of what their true motivation is. And this is especially true with things that may relate to social disapproval. We talked before with luxury items. Many people don't want to admit to themselves that the reason that I want a luxury item is because it gives me status. It makes me appear better than my peers. And by the way, interesting, you've heard the saying, money can't buy happiness. And that's true. I have a friend who had a lot of money. She says, money can't buy you happiness, but it gives you options. But there's been a lot of research on happiness recently, interesting. And one of the things that they found is, while money can't buy happiness, people who have just a little bit more money than their peers tend to be happier. So it's keeping up with the Joneses. If you're the Joneses, you tend to be a little bit happier than the people who are trying to keep up with you. So we may not be aware of our true motivation, either because through social disapproval we're not going to admit to it. And by the way, when you're doing market research in areas that are dealing with things that might have social approval, one of the ways to get beyond that barrier is, so like, who here wants other people to see them as being very rich and highly status oriented? Okay, nobody. So what we say is, who here knows somebody that is really status oriented and wants everybody to know they're rich? Okay, and so what happens is, when you ask questions like that, even though you're talking about another person, people tend to answer from their own experience. So even though, who here has ever cheated on a test? Okay, we've got, the finance majors. And who here knows somebody who's cheated on a test? But again, when you're dealing with controversial issues, rather than asking the question directly, if you ask the question indirectly, a lot of times the indirect response is an indication of the ecosystem or the belief system that you're actually dealing with. Again, a way of dealing with these hidden motivations or unconscious motivations.